Look at that. That's what you're supposed to see. Yo, welcome back to the channel. Today we're talking about the best kept secret. Well, it's not really that big a secret, but it feels like a secret sometimes. But today we're going to be talking about Vision 3 500T, and that is the movie film made by Kodak. Vision 3 is used for all kinds of Hollywood productions and indie films and all that stuff. But you can also use that film for still photography. Everybody seems to be a little bit worried about it given that it has that REMJET, and we'll talk about REMJET in a second, but I want to encourage you to actually go out there and try to source some Vision 3 for yourself because it's way cheaper than all of the still photography film that is made by Kodak, and honestly, it might be better performing than any of them. And I say that with some experience given that I've shot a lot of Vision 3 across all the different formats that exist, except for 200T. I haven't tried that, but I definitely want to at some point. But long story short, Vision 3 film is actually a fantastic film. And this is professional grade quality stuff. Again, it's used by Hollywood. If they can use it, then surely you can use it as well. So let's talk about Vision 3 a little bit. If there's any reason for which you should go out there and try to get some Vision 3, it is specifically the price. Vision 3, when you roll it into 35mm canisters and you kind of do the math and go backwards, it comes out to a lot less money than what you would pay for a roll of Portra 400, for example. Portra 400 right now here in the UK, a roll of 35mm film with 36 exposures is way too much money. It's probably like $12.99 or something like that. That's pounds. So do the currency conversion and you'll see what I'm talking about. That's a lot of money. That's not what it used to cost, and it's only getting worse and worse and worse. So because of that, it's definitely good to look at some alternatives. Vision 3, so for example, if you buy a whole 400-foot reel, which I think is the smallest you can get, if you bulk roll that yourself, and you exclude the cost of acquiring, the little contraption you need to bulk roll and the canisters, literally just on a film basis, you could probably get that cost down to, let's say, 4 pounds per roll or something like that. That's crazy. That is a massive difference between paying $12.99 and 4 pounds. And, Portra 400 is a fantastic film. That is professional level photographic still film. But there's no reason you can't use the Vision 3 film that exists. So just on a price basis, there's a massive difference there. And of course, if you can't roll it yourself and you buy it from people who are rolling it and then selling it, it's still going to be a lot cheaper. Here, for example, there's a specific shop that I can get a roll for. I think it was $6.99 or something along the 6 pound range. That is a fantastic price, again, when you compare it to a roll of Portra 400, for example. And that's Portra 400. Don't even look at Portra 800 as an example. Color film is just crazy expensive right now, and everybody's feeling that. So just on price, you got to check out the Vision 3 film. But what about the REMJET? Everybody's worried about the REMJET. Yes, you have to deal with the REMJET. How do you deal with the REMJET? It's actually not that difficult. You can either buy a REMJET remover from a lot of different places online, or you can make your own recipe as well using some of the recipes that are found online. Basically, the REMJET is just a coating on the back of the film that is meant to dissolve during development. And that's exactly what you do. Before you start your development process, you get in there and you remove it. For my development, I actually did the full ECN2 process, which is the technically correct way of developing Vision 3 film. And I use this QWD kit right here. This includes every single step that you need in order to process this film 100% end to end. So of course you start with the REMJET removal, which you see right here. REMJET is kind of a crazy thing to look at because when you pour the water in there and the remover and you rinse it, it comes out like this. It's just a super dark liquid and you're like, wow, I did not expect that. But it's actually kind of endearing to see it. It's very satisfying. So remove the REMJET, and then after that, you can choose to develop as you please. I did ECN2, like I said, and the reason I did that is because I wanted to see the truest kind of colors of this film, the truest grain, the truest characteristics. This film was designed for the ECN2 process, so that's technically where you get the best results. Doesn't mean you have to do ECN2. You can do C41, and we'll talk about that in a second. But when you develop with ECN2, you end up getting a fantastic product, and your scans are amazing. This film was designed basically for scanning. This is part of kind of the modern process of filmmaking, which is shot on film, and then you create a digital intermediate by scanning the film. So you get incredible colors, you get super fine grain, even for 500 speed film. 500T is just super sharp here. In fact, when I tried to print this film, which we'll talk about later, I couldn't even find the grain. It's very difficult. But long story short, you get incredible reproduction of colors, you get super fine grain, and you get a relatively low contrast image, which again, for a digital intermediate is great because then in post, you can manipulate this however you please. I find this film is one of the best to edit because it just gives you something very kind of, stable to start with, and then from there you can take it in whatever direction you want. So I really appreciate that about this film. That's the ECN2 process. If you don't want to buy ECN2 chems, well, you can use C41. And I'm assuming a lot of you probably already have C41 chems at home. I definitely have some, and that's typically how I process everything that I shoot that's color. So when you process Vision 3 film in C41, all it does is basically a couple things. For one, it gives you a lot more contrast on your images, and that's kind of a style choice. On top of that, you do probably get a bit of an extra stop of light, let's say half a stop. And this happens because of cross-processing, because you're technically pulling a bit more information out of the negatives, given that you're processing them a different way. It's just kind of how it works with C41 on Vision 3 film. So these are all totally fine. This is not something that needs to worry you. It's not something that's going to ruin the look of your film. It's just going to be different. And in fact, I find that the C41 developing of Vision 3 film actually gives me better negatives for printing. It resembles more of what I'm used to, and it's got a bit more contrast as well. So in general, you decide whether you want to develop your film in ECN2 chems or in C41 chems. C41 chems are typically a bit cheaper since there's more kits available, but ECN2 chems might be a little pricier because there's not that many different options out there. I use the QWD one, as I mentioned, so that's a good option you could take a look at, but there's definitely some other ones out there as well. So let's talk about printing. As you know, I love to get in the darkroom and create some color prints using all the different variety of film stocks that I typically try to shoot. Vision 3 film is not my ideal when it comes to printing, and I just think that typically the colors, when you darkroom print them, don't look as strong and as beautiful as when you scan them. I have no technical reason here, I'm no scientist, but it's just kind of what I've noticed. And on top of that, the negatives that you get from Vision 3 when you develop them in ECN2 chems are often a little bit kind of lighter and, let's say, thinner. And that's kind of that contrast thing I was talking about. The negatives lack a bit of that oomph. So when I know I want to print something, I actually prefer to develop my Vision 3 film in C41 chems because the negatives come out a bit more dense. I actually made a video about this. Check it out in the link above. But basically, I took the exact same shot over and over again, and then I compared it with the two different developing methods. Again, this is all kind of a style choice. This is something you decide to do for whatever your preference is. Technically, there is a right way to develop Vision 3, but the point is if you don't do it that way and you do it with C41, you're not doing something really terrible. You're not destroying the look of your film. You're just getting a different version of it. So again, for darkroom printing, I kind of prefer Vision 3 film developed in C41 chems. And that's convenient because I pretty much always have C41 chems available. Let's actually take a look at some prints I've made here. So I got my two prints here. First off, I got this kind of portrait that's actually facing in my direction. And this is of a musician, a guitarist that I photographed. You've probably seen her in some other videos. I shot some Silvera film with her. I shot some stuff on the C40 or C330 Mamiya camera. Either way, here's some Vision 3. And this is 500T, of course. And I shot this without a filter on the lens. So that's tungsten film that's balanced for tungsten light, not daylight. And therefore, you'll see a bit of a blue cast on these images. It's very hard kind of to remove when you're darkroom printing as opposed to when you're scanning, when I feel like you can very easily get rid of that and really transform your image. Again, that difference between scanning and printing is very evident with this film. And here's another shot. This is kind of a candid street shot that I took. Really love this. I think it has such a cinematic look to it because of the composition and the lighting. And, we're using movie film, so maybe that contributed as well. But as you can see with both of these, again, there's a hint of a blue cast. And I manipulated the colors on these a bit, but that blue cast is just evident in kind of the daylight portions of this. So if you're going to shoot this film, perhaps put a filter on your lens to combat that tungsten situation. But either way, I still really like how this looks. And as I mentioned, when I was printing this, it's so fine grained. Of course, you're not going to be able to see it here because, I'm not zooming in. But these prints have such little grain. And this is 500 speed film. It's very, very sharp. And when I was printing, I was trying to get my focus down. And it was very difficult. I could not find the grain with my focus finder. It was just something that usually is very easy to do with higher speed films. This has even less grain than Portra 400, I feel like. So it's pretty impressive. But either way, these are my prints. I love darkroom printing. And even though this film is not ideal, let's say, if you develop it ECN2, with C41, it transforms it a little bit, gives it a bit more character. The grain becomes a little bit more apparent. You get a bit more contrast. So I really love that about this film, that you have options here. All right, back to the video. So did I convince you? Are you going to go out there and buy some Vision 3 film? I definitely think you should. And I actually think I'm going to be investing in kind of a bulk reel, 400 foot or something like that. Because I'm starting to use this film a lot more and more. And I'm really not enjoying the price hike that I'm seeing here for the typical Kodak films. Vision 3 is available basically only for 35mm, but there are some companies out there that are sourcing some bigger bulk rolls and are actually cutting it to 120 format. So take a look at eBay or just kind of do a Google search and see what you can find. But I definitely recommend you all experiment because the REMJET's not that scary. It's very doable to get rid of that. And when you scan this film, I think you're gonna really like what you see. All right, y'all, that's what I got for today. If you enjoyed the video, of course, go like it. And if you haven't subscribed yet, come on, let's go ahead and subscribe. All right, y'all, I'm out.